The courtroom was deathly silent. Even the air seemed to hold its breath as Judge Delacroix raised the ancient wooden gavel. For a fleeting moment, no one dared to move, neither the iron-faced lawyers nor the politicians in shadowy back rows. Then, the gavel crashed down with a force that seemed to split history itself. Papers fluttered. A young prosecutor nearly dropped her pen. Across the room, Alexander Gray, 43, male, stoic in a dark navy suit, did not blink. He stared forward, jaw clenched, as the clerk's trembling voice announced, "The court will hear new evidence, evidence that could unravel the empire." Gasps rippled. Senator Rina Malik, 38, female, sharp-eyed and immaculate, pressed her lips tight, eyes burning with fear and fury. A single sheet of paper, marked confidential, was lifted into the light. And in that instant, the fate of everyone in the chamber was rewritten. As the echo of the gavel faded, a wave of whispers rolled through the gallery like a sudden wind. Eyes darted, heads turned, and every seat felt charged with electric dread. Alexander Gray glanced sideways at his lawyer, who mouthed, "Stay calm," though his own hands shook. Senator Rina Malik leaned forward, her breath shallow, catching the eye of a rival senator whose smirk betrayed too much knowledge. From the back, a news reporter scribbled furiously, sensing history in the making. The judge's gavel still reverberated in every heart. Somewhere, the empire's loyalists and enemies alike realized the balance of power had shifted. "Did you see what was on that paper?" a woman hissed behind her gloved hand. Alexander did not move, but inside, the world he knew was crumbling. The gallery, once a silent audience, became a living, breathing thing, hungry for a fall. Every gaze in the room seemed to find Alexander Gray. Cameras zoomed in, journalists bristled. The clerk, voice still shaking, began to read. Presented before the court, evidence implicating Mr. Gray in actions directly undermining the trust of the empire. Alexander's vision blurred, memories crowding in. Secret meetings, coded messages, faces of old allies turned enemies. Senator Malik said, "He's finished." The judge interrupted, "Order, we have yet to hear the defense." But the court, once sacred ground, had become a crucible. Alexander's composure teetered as reporters scrawled down every word, and a young woman in the front row wiped a tear from her eye. "Why him?" she whispered. The answer, unspoken, hung heavy. The empire needed a scapegoat, and today it seemed Alexander Gray had been chosen for the slaughter. The prosecution rose with predatory grace. "Mr. Gray," the lead attorney, Victoria Singh, female, 46, steely-eyed, began, "do you deny these actions?" Alexander's voice was barely above a whisper. "I do." Victoria pressed. "Then, how do you explain these transfers?" She slid evidence across the table, bank records, coded notes. Alexander's lawyer objected. "Circumstantial." But the judge's hand silenced him. Victoria moved closer, every word a dagger. "You risked everything for secrets, Mr. Gray. What did you hope to gain?" The gallery leaned in as Alexander replied, voice breaking, "I did what I had to do to protect the truth." The prosecution smirked. The cross-examination wasn't about answers, it was about blood. And as the judge banged his gavel again, the whole courtroom smelled it. Word of the hearing spilled from the courtroom and into the marble corridors of power. Senators gathered in tight knots, voices low, faces grim. Some saw opportunity, others saw doom. "If Gray falls, the whole line unravels," a senator muttered. Outside, protesters massed behind barricades, signs raised against the empire's corruption. Inside, Rina Malik made her move, approaching an old ally, whispering, "Be ready, this is just the beginning." Alexander watched through the glass as the world shifted around him. The walls closed in, the ceiling seemed lower, and the empire, once unbreakable, now trembled on a fault line. The echo of the gavel had become a drum beat for war. Behind the heavy oak door of a private chamber, Alexander Gray slumped into a leather chair, shoulders caving in under invisible weight. His lawyer, Marcus Hale, 44, male, graying at the temples, paced in anxious silence. The air was thick with old cigar smoke, and a faint trace of cologne, memories of victories long past. Marcus said, "You need to tell me everything, Alexander. No more secrets, not if we want to survive this." Alexander looked away, jaw tight, haunted eyes unfocused. The mask of control he wore for the world was gone, replaced by raw exhaustion and a flicker of fear. "They're going to crucify me, Marcus," Alexander whispered, voice rough. Marcus knelt beside him, squeezing his arm. "Only if you let them. But if you're holding anything back, now is the time." The silence grew heavy, both men surrounded by the ghosts of choices past. Outside the courthouse, Rina Malik strode briskly down the steps, flanked by aides who whispered urgent updates into her ear. She barely listened. Betrayal was a taste she'd long since grown accustomed to, but today it was bitter in her mouth. Her phone buzzed, a coded message from an old friend turned enemy. "The fall is coming. Choose your side." Rina paused, eyes scanning the crowd of journalists and protesters, calculating her next move. "They want you to break," her aide said quietly. Rina replied, "They'll have to do better than this." Inside, a betrayal was unfolding. Outside, Rina's every step was a dance on the edge of a knife. The Empire was a family, but it was also a pack of wolves, and today Rina Malik felt their teeth closing in. In a shadowy townhouse, Alexander's estranged wife, Lila Gray, 40, a female, elegant but worn, watched the hearing replay on television, her face unreadable. Their teenage daughter, Sophia, 16, hovered in the hallway, fear etched on her young face. Lila pressed pause as Alexander's name echoed through the speakers. "Mom, is Dad going to prison?" Sophia asked, voice trembling. Lila smoothed Sophia's hair, trying to hide her own dread. "We don't know, sweetheart, but your father always tried to protect us, even from himself." The silence between mother and daughter grew heavy, both searching for hope in a world that now seemed unmoored. Lila's phone chimed with a message, "You're next." Her hands shook as she turned away, hiding her fear from Sophia. Outside, rain streaked the windows, the world closing in. In the bowels of the city, beneath a flickering street lamp, two figures met in the fog, Senator Rina Malik and an enigmatic fixer, Viktor Sokolov, 50, male, gaunt, trench coat pulled tight. "You said you could help me," Rina whispered. Viktor's smile was thin, dangerous. "I can help you survive, Senator, but the cost is higher than you imagine." Rina's breath misted in the cold air, her resolve visibly tested. "What do you want?" she asked. Viktor handed her a flash drive. "Information, leverage, and when the time comes, your silence." Rina hesitated, then took the drive, palms slick with sweat. Somewhere above, a police siren wailed. Rina realized that to survive, she might have to betray everything she'd ever believed in, including herself. Back in the marble halls, a new force entered the fray. A rival senator, Marcus Bell, 52, male, imposing, silver-haired, marched into the press scrum, flanked by loyalists. He raised his voice. "This case is more than one man. It's about the soul of our empire." Cameras flashed as he threw down a manila folder. "These documents will prove who has corrupted our sacred trust." Reporters swarmed, questions flying. Bell met Rina Malik's gaze across the chaos, his expression a warning and a threat. Rina's grip tightened on the flash drive hidden in her coat. Alexander, watching from afar, felt the Empire's machinery grinding into motion. The enemy's first move had been made, and now, every piece on the board was in play. The next morning, the courtroom hummed with an undercurrent of suspicion. Marcus Hale arrived early, briefcase tight in hand, and discovered the evidence files, once locked away, now slightly ajar, the seal broken. "Someone's tampered with the records," Marcus whispered, voice icy. Alexander Gray's heart pounded as he leaned over, scanning for changes. Key pages were missing, and in their place, new documents appeared, ones painting Alexander as the mastermind behind a far-reaching conspiracy. The judge's gaze narrowed as the prosecution, too confident, slid the altered evidence onto the bench. "Do you recognize these documents, Mr. Gray?" Victoria Singh demanded. Alexander's lips pressed thin. "No, because they're not mine." But the damage was done. The weight of a lie slipped quietly into the official record, threatened to crush whatever hope remained. In a cramped office stacked with old files, Marcus Hale stared at Alexander across a cluttered desk. The silence between them was thick with doubt. "Are you telling me everything?" Marcus asked, his eyes searching Alexander's face for a sign of deception. Alexander's shoulders stiffened. "You know me, Marcus. I'm not perfect, but I'm not what they say I am." The trust that once bound them now seemed fragile, stretched thin by relentless pressure. Marcus pinched the bridge of his nose. "They'll tear us apart if we let them, Alex." Alexander's voice cracked. "So don't let them." In the corner, an old photograph of their first case together seemed to mock the fading alliance. For the first time, Marcus wondered if even loyalty could survive a storm this fierce. The elevator doors slid shut behind Rina Malik as she stepped into the sterile parking garage beneath the courthouse. From the darkness, a voice, cold, male, unseen, echoed, "Careful, Senator, you're playing a dangerous game." Rina's breath caught, her hand instinctively gripping the flash drive in her coat. A black car idled nearby, tinted windows obscuring its occupants. The message was clear: back down or face destruction. Rina kept walking, heels clicking against concrete, but her mind raced with dread. "I don't respond to threats," she whispered into the darkness, though her fingers trembled. The car's engine revved ominously. Every shadow now seemed a potential assassin. The rules of engagement had shifted, and Rina Malik realized she was being hunted as much as anyone. Victoria Singh prepared her next strike from the sanctuary of her glass-walled office, city lights glimmering far below. She dialed an encrypted number, voice flat. "Make sure the witness doesn't testify, whatever it takes." Across town, a frightened young man, Eli Turner, 27, male, nervous, paced his small apartment, phone in hand, voicemail full of warnings. Victoria stared out into the night, her reflection fractured across the glass. "In this war, there are no innocents," she muttered. Back at the courthouse, word spread that the key witness had vanished. Marcus Hale, upon hearing the news, slammed his fist on the table, there crossing every line. The law had become a battlefield, and everyone's hands, even the righteous, were stained. News broke that the judge had ruled a portion of the evidence inadmissible, citing the tampered files. The defense team allowed a brief sigh of relief, one small victory in a losing war. Yet, outside, the damage had already spread. Headlines painted Alexander as guilty, talk shows buzzed with speculation, and protesters grew more aggressive. In the courthouse stairwell, Alexander met Marcus, voice heavy with exhaustion. "We won nothing. They're bleeding us dry." Marcus nodded. "It's not about truth anymore, it's about survival." As they exited into the rain, Alexander realized their first win had cost them public trust, peace of mind, and perhaps even their souls. In the distance, lightning split the sky, a storm far from over. A cold wind rattled the windows as word spread through the courthouse. Eli Turner, the prosecution's key witness, had vanished without a trace. Victoria Singh slammed her fist on her desk, fury flashing in her eyes. "Find him now," she barked into her phone, her usually composed facade fractured by panic. Marcus Hale received the news with grim resignation, muttering, "No one just disappears. Someone made him disappear." Alexander Gray watched the drama unfold from a distance, suspicion blooming in his chest. In the shadows, Rina Malik observed, calculating how this missing piece would shift the balance. Outside, the world grew darker. With no witness, the prosecution's case wavered, but the truth felt further away than ever. In the city's underbelly, a silent deal had been struck, one more soul lost to the Empire's war. In the privacy of his dimly lit apartment, Alexander Gray poured a drink with shaking hands, the glass clinking against the bottle. Marcus Hale sat across from him, voice low. "You have to tell me the truth, Alex. What really happened that night?" The room felt haunted by secrets, shadows shifting across old photographs. Alexander stared into his glass, guilt swimming behind his eyes. I tried to do the right thing, Marcus, but I made enemies, powerful ones. Marcus leaned in, desperate. Did you betray them? Alexander's reply was barely a whisper. I betrayed myself. The silence pressed in, heavy and unforgiving. Outside, the city glowed with 1,000 silent witnesses. For a moment, Marcus saw not just a client, but a man drowning in regret, desperate for a way out. Rina Malik entered a luxurious hotel suite, tension tightening her every step. Waiting for her was Viktor Sokolov, his cold smile never reaching his eyes. Senator Malik, you owe me, Viktor said, voice like ice. He slid a folder across the table. Inside, damning evidence and photographs that could end her career. Do what I ask or these become tomorrow's headlines, he threatened. Rina's lips curled in silent fury. What do you want? Viktor leaned close, his whisper venomous. Make sure Gray never leaves that courtroom free. Rina's heart pounded, trapped by secrets she'd spent a lifetime guarding. As she gripped the folder, she understood that the Empire's war was not only fought in courts, but in the shadows, where the cost was always personal. Marcus Hale sat alone on a bench in the courthouse's grand hallway, hands shaking, head in his hands. Moments later, Alexander Gray approached, guilt and desperation etched into his features. You think I'm lying to you? Alexander said quietly. Marcus looked up, pain in his eyes. I want to believe you, but everything I know is slipping away. The bond forged by years of struggle now splintered under the weight of suspicion and betrayal. I trusted you with everything, Marcus whispered. Alexander's reply was bitter. Trust is a luxury I can't afford anymore. For a moment neither man spoke, the silence heavy as marble. In that echoing corridor, friendship fractured, replaced by the cold machinery of survival. Outside, thunder rolled, the storm finally breaking. As the night deepened, a clandestine meeting unfolded in a parking garage. Senator Rina Malik, eyes blazing, confronted by an anonymous informant. He handed her an envelope. You're not the only one with secrets, Senator. She opened it, breath catching as photographs revealed the true traitor within their ranks. Marcus Bell, orchestrator of the evidence tampering and the witness disappearance. The informant faded into the shadows. Rina stared at the photos, realization hardening into resolve. This ends now, she whispered. For the first time, she saw how deep the Empire's rot truly ran. The war was not just public, it was within their own walls. As Rina stepped into the night, her decision sent ripples through the very heart of power. At dawn, Marcus Hale rifled through a locked briefcase in his office, desperation clawing at his composure. Buried beneath decoy files, he found a flash drive marked with a symbol he recognized from the evidence-tampering photos. Plugging it in, Marcus watched as a video loaded. Security footage from the night, the evidence was altered. On screen, the unmistakable figure of Marcus Bell was captured slipping documents into the case. He did it, Marcus whispered, stunned. He immediately called Alexander Gray, voice urgent. Alex. It was Bell. We have proof. The sun broke through the blinds, casting the room in golden hope. For the first time in weeks, Marcus felt a surge of relief. This was the twist they needed. But exposing Bell meant unleashing chaos neither of them could control. The news spread like wildfire. By midday, reporters besieged the courthouse, cameras flashing as protesters clashed with police. Inside, Alexander Gray felt the pressure of a system on the verge of collapse. Marcus handed him the flash drive. Once we submit this, everything changes. Alexander nodded, face set in grim determination. No turning back. Meanwhile, Senator Bell stormed into his office, hurling papers and barking orders at his aides, fury turning to desperation. Rina Malik observed the chaos from a quiet corner, her gaze calculating, knowing that the Empire's foundation was fracturing in real time. On the courthouse steps, a single scream pierced the uproar. Someone fainted, a harbinger of the pandemonium just beginning. In that storm of noise and fear, the truth became both a weapon and a curse. In the chaos, alliances began to crumble. Inside a marble corridor, Rina Malik confronted Marcus Bell, who tried to bluff his way out of exposure. "You can't prove anything," Bell spat, but Rena's eyes were cold steel. "It's over. You gambled with the Empire's future, and you lost." Bell lunged for her, but she stood firm, unflinching. Across the hall, Alexander and Marcus moved toward the courtroom, their former allies now keeping their distance, some glaring, some looking away in shame. Trust was gone, replaced by suspicion and fear. The Empire's power brokers, once united, now turned on each other with a ferocity born of desperation. The old order collapsed as quickly as it had risen, leaving everyone scrambling to survive the reckoning. Inside the packed courtroom, Alexander Gray took the stand one last time, voice raw but resolute. "I never sought to destroy what we built. I only wanted justice." The judge listened intently, the jury tense, every word echoing against centuries-old walls. "There are those who would sacrifice truth for power," Alexander continued, glancing at Marcus Bell. "But we cannot let fear dictate our future." Rena Malik watched, eyes moist, understanding the cost of every confession. Marcus Hale gripped his briefcase, silent support radiating from his side of the bench. Outside, the roar of protesters seeped through the walls, a relentless reminder of what was at stake. With a steady breath, Alexander ended, "Do not judge me by what others have done in my name. Judge me by the truth I have brought to light." As the gavel fell once more, a hush descended. The judge declared Bell's crimes exposed, but also acknowledged the Empire's deep wounds. Reporters scribbled notes. The crowd outside roared with outrage and relief in equal measure. Alexander Gray sat quietly, knowing vindication came at a cost, his reputation tarnished, his family in hiding, his future uncertain. Rena Malik stepped into the corridor, head held high, but the victory tasted hollow. Marcus Hale placed a hand on Alexander's shoulder. "You changed everything, Alex. But some things can't be fixed." The price of truth was steep. Innocence lost, old bonds shattered, an empire forever altered. And in the echoing silence, each survivor asked themselves, was it worth the blood, the pain, the sacrifice? The final day dawned heavy with anticipation. The courtroom was a fortress of tension, each seat filled with faces hungry for closure or revenge. Alexander Gray stood beside Marcus Hale, suit rumpled, eyes hollowed by sleepless nights. Across the aisle, Rena Malik arrived, poised but brittle, her alliances in tatters. Judge Delacroix entered, robes flowing, and the entire room rose in unison, a ritual that felt almost funereal. The prosecutor's voice rang out, "The people demand accountability," but Alexander held his ground, refusing to break. He met every accusation with the steadiness of a man who'd already lost everything but his resolve. The world beyond the court's walls waited for a single word, guilty or innocent, knowing that whatever followed would change the empire forever. As the prosecution unleashed a barrage of accusations, Alexander's defenses wavered. Victoria Singh's questions cut deep, every word a calculated strike. "You had the motive, the means, and the opportunity," she declared, her voice slicing through the tension. Alexander replied, "I had something more, a conscience." The room rippled with skepticism. Rena Malik's gaze softened for a moment, seeing not just a man on trial but a soul laid bare. Marcus Hale leaned in, whispering, "Stay with me, Alex." Alexander steadied himself, remembering every sacrifice, every betrayal. As the evidence mounted, it seemed inevitable that he would fall. Yet, even as the walls closed in, Alexander refused to surrender, clinging to a truth only he fully understood. Survival is not always the same as justice. The defense played its final card, projecting security footage of Marcus Bell tampering with evidence for the entire courtroom to see. Gasps and murmurs erupted as Bell's betrayal was revealed in living color. Bell tried to stand, shouting denials, but Judge Delacroix' gavel thundered down. "Enough," he commanded. The Empire's power brokers, many present for the spectacle, watched their legacy dissolve before their eyes. Marcus Hale said, "This is our moment. Don't flinch." Alexander looked at Bell, voice calm. "You gambled with lives. Now face the truth." The prosecution's facade crumbled. For one breathless instant, the old order seemed to die, its illusions shattered by a single act of courage and exposure. A new path, uncertain and dangerous, beckoned from the ruins. A hush fell as Judge Delacroix addressed the court. In light of new evidence, this court finds Marcus Bell guilty of perjury and obstruction. Regarding Alexander Gray, the charges are dismissed. Relief swept through Alexander, tears pricking his eyes. Marcus Hale gripped his friend's shoulder, the weight of months lifting. Outside, news crews roared, the word, innocent, spreading like wildfire. Rena Malik closed her eyes, gratitude and grief mingling in her expression. She had survived, but the cost was written on every line of her face. Bell was led away in handcuffs, face carved with rage and disbelief. For a moment, justice stood tall and clean, untouchable by politics or fear. But the silence that followed hinted at scars that would never heal. The courthouse emptied into the evening, the city awash in headlines proclaiming Alexander's exoneration. Yet, the cost was everywhere. On the strained faces of friends, the ruined careers of rivals, and the emptiness inside Alexander himself. Outside, Marcus Hale hugged his client, saying, "We did it, but what did it take from you?" Alexander stared at the gathering dusk, haunted by memories of allies lost and truths exposed. Rena Malik, passing by, nodded in silent respect, understanding the shared burden. The empire would endure, but it would never be the same. Justice had been served, but peace was nowhere to be found. In the fading light, Alexander walked away from the courthouse, every step a reminder that some victories feel like defeat. The headlines raced ahead of the truth, splashing Alexander Gray's name and Bell's downfall across every screen and newspaper. In the government's heart, stunned senators gathered behind closed doors, bitterly divided. Rena Malik paced a marble corridor, phone pressed to her ear, as aides relayed breaking alliances and resignations. "The old guard is finished," an aide said. Rena replied, "Nothing's finished. We just survived the storm." Outside, crowds thronged the courthouse square, some cheering for justice, others jeering at a system forever tarnished. Alexander watched from a window, knowing that freedom did not erase scars. The empire itself seemed to stagger, its power fractured, every victory leaving new wounds. In the cold light of day, survival looked nothing like triumph. Justice had been served, but everywhere its cost was written, in destroyed reputations, empty offices, and families splintered by rumor and fear. Marcus Hale packed up his desk, pausing over an old photo of himself and Alexander from better days. He sighed, saying to a colleague, "We won, but none of us got out clean." Meanwhile, Rena Malik met with her daughter in a city park, holding her close. "You did the right thing," her daughter whispered, but Rena's smile was brittle. "Sometimes the right thing is what's left after everything else is gone." Across town, Alexander Gray walked alone through a press of strangers, invisible despite his fame, the price of truth echoing in every step. No one who fought the empire's war emerged unchanged. With the storm behind him, Alexander Gray stepped onto an empty street just before dawn. The world had moved on, but he was changed, lines etched deeper in his face, the weight of the trial forever in his eyes. Passing a newsstand plastered with his name, Alexander paused, then turned away. He walked past shuttered shops and silent taxis, feeling both the relief of freedom and the emptiness of loss. In a quiet moment, he called his daughter. "Are you safe?" he asked gently. "I am now," she replied. Alexander smiled faintly, a hint of hope breaking through his exhaustion. For the first time, he allowed himself to imagine a future outside the empire's shadow, a future shaped by scars, but still his to claim. Far beyond the city, the world watched as the once mighty empire stumbled through its reckoning. International headlines called it the trial that changed everything. Rena Malik addressed a press conference, every word weighed and measured. "We must learn from our failures, not hide them," she said, her voice both weary and unyielding. Diplomats whispered, investors hesitated, and rival nations seized on the moment. As cameras flashed, Alexander's face appeared on every screen, a symbol of survival, but also a warning. "Will you run for office?" a reporter shouted. Rena's eyes met the lens, steady. "Not until the wounds heal." In that instant, the world glimpsed both the fragility and the defiance that would shape the empire's legacy for generations to come. Night fell quietly as Alexander Gray returned home, city lights flickering outside his window. He poured himself a drink, gazing at the skyline that had once felt so familiar. For a long moment, he stood in silence, the room filled with memories and the ghosts of choices made. His phone buzzed with messages, some of congratulations, others of warning. Alexander ignored them all. At the edge of sleep, he whispered to the darkness, "Power doesn't save you. Truth just makes you bleed slower." The echo lingered, soft but unbreakable. Outside, the world moved on, carrying the scars of an empire forever changed. The case was closed, but the wound remained. A silence deeper than any verdict, a legacy that could never truly be erased.